live tonight. We are live right now. I'm going to do a couple of things. We're going to look at how to comp a rental. So we're going to just go online and kind of look at a deal that's for sale and see what we think it can rent for and why we think that. We can jump into shopping for a deal. So on market, what you should expect, and let's run some basic numbers to see, what kind of down payment you're going to need for different asset classes, specifically single family in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then I'll just go over some of the things that I'm working on right now and what we're going to do this week in property management in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm Daniel Bell. You're probably seeing this on your timeline because we're friends. I'm a property manager in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I manage right around 200 units right now, give or take, and we are trying to grow to 500 units in total in the next 2 years. And I hope that if you're watching this and you have a small, medium, or large portfolio, that you'd consider talking with us at a coffee date in the near time future, and then seeing if we're a good fit for you. So let's just get into it. Hopefully my audio is working. I am not sure if it is or not. I'm actually going to just jump on the live myself as a viewer just to see. Okay, yeah, I can hear myself. Cool. Alright, so number one, we're not going to do any super strategic things tonight in any direct order. I have not planned at all for this, so we're going to jump in and let's find a property in Knoxville. I'm not going to say whether it's a deal you should buy or anything like that. We're just going to pick a house and then we're going to project what it could rent for. So I literally do not have any specific property in mind. Let's look at something in Powell. Price tag something under 400 preferably. Condo, I'd like to do a single family. Something like this. This could be interesting. So this is 8205 Cricket Road, Powell, Tennessee. So 4-bedroom, 2-bath, just under 1,800 square feet. Let's see what else it has. No HOA, which is going to be good for an investor. I want to know how much land comes with it, though. That's really what I'm interested in. So a half-acre lot, pretty standard. Now, it said 1973 build. Where did I say that? Said it somewhere, right here. So let's go and look at the photos. I like to think about the outside of the house. I want to first know, is the front and backyard usable? As in, how flat is it? And then I also want to check if it has a fence, because that is like a major priority in what we hear from applicants every day. They are always wanting a fence over garages, so that's a really important variable to know when you're shopping for investments. Demand will help obviously make your rental have a higher rent price, but it can also help finding better qualified tenants, and that is probably more important than getting your rent rate higher, because a good tenant is worth a lot of money. That is somebody that does not cause any damage, reports maintenance fast, is accurate with their expectation of what maintenance is, somebody that's not picky on the ice machine broke and making sure we get that fixed in less than an hour. That might not happen, but somebody that will alert us so that way we're aware of those things, and so 6 to 12 months later we don't have more issues in the property that rack up to a larger bill that then truly depreciates the property, and that's not what we're looking for other than on taxes. So um, you know, that type of a tenant that stays long, pays every month, reports maintenance accurately, and does not damage the house is somebody that ultimately is going to be who you're looking for and who will make your investment a success versus a failure. So on this house, I mean, great front yard. Obviously, in Knoxville, you have a lot of different types of front yards, that being how close the structure is to the road. It can get very, very close. So, you know, this same 4-bedroom, 2-bath house with no front yard is going to rent significantly different than this house that does have a front yard and off-street parking, meaning there's a driveway and a 2-car garage. So right off the bat, we know that there's quite a few amenities. I'm seeing floors that have been recently redone. Paint cannot change. It's something that can help the inside of the house significantly, but not mandatory. Just depends on your expectations as a landlord of what you would want. A tenant is going to look at this, and honestly, I would just paint the whole house, you know, a gray or some sort of like off-white to basically keep, you know, expectations pretty, you know, normal. But blue is what it is. It's not gonna change the rate of rent, so don't worry there. So layout is my next concern. Just seeing like barn door, and this is getting a little creative. That's interesting to me because that might just be a really cool thing they did, or it might be hiding some wonky, you know, situation that this house may have. So living room doesn't look too bad, pretty standard. Obviously, closed off entryway from that, which is fine. We got 2 living rooms. Okay. Floor change in the kitchen, not a big deal. Butcher block, older cabinets, pretty old cabinets. Again, that is something to consider. You wouldn't want to put money and replace those after buying this type of a house, but they are something that may need to be upgraded in the future to obtain higher rent rates. Fireplace, that's going to be something you're going to want to have on the lease, say that it's not allowed. It's probably going to be something that goes against your insurance as a landlord in the first place, so just making sure that the lease says that it's off limits, and closing that off may be actually you know, a good idea. So I don't see any, like, I'm hoping there's a vent above that. I hate when kitchens just can smoke out so easily. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty standard place. I like the square footage and the amount of beds. That's really the main benefit here. You know, pantry is what it is. Just a lot of room in this house. 3-season room. See a lot of areas for repair that could happen. Like, you know, 3-season rooms often leak, and that can cause bigger damage than what they bring, but hopefully nothing too crazy here. Yellow paint, we gotta love it. No fan in the bathroom is from what I see, so that's gonna have to get installed. Oftentimes a lot of my landlords are actually putting automatic fans that turn on with sensors, so if you turn the light on, the fan also comes on at all times. That way mold isn't getting built up in the attic, and that shower steam can get out of the house easily. That's a big thing. And then the other thing that I'm already thinking of is if the other bathroom has a tub, because families want to have at least one tub for their children. Having two shower inserts, I've had a landlord accidentally do that, and it can cause a situation where you have lower demand, because after people go and view the house, they realize they can't give their kids and toddlers baths, and then they're not as interested. So it's important to at least have one bathtub in the house. I bet their realtor told them to change the floors out before they sold it, but who knows? Which is honestly not a bad idea. I'm not hating on that. It's just, it was the only upgrade, it seems like. This bathroom does have a nice new vanity, it seems, and they probably upgraded this to kind of make up for maybe not painting. But I would have just thought they would have painted the house. Having yellow in that bathroom, to me, would make a lot of sense to paint that for people trying to buy this. So, and changing out the fans. You know, my wife and I are looking at updating the house that we're moving into, and fans are only about $100, and it can change a room for the better. Tons of storage space, ton of it. I mean, and I'm sure that's the garage. If they have all these toys down there, they're probably not carrying it from some stairway. So that's also, there it is. Yep, there's your 2-car garage with the washer, dryer, hot water heater, everything down there. So that's a ton of storage. So this is actually one of those houses that I actually think that if you have a tenant looking to move in, this versus maybe like a brand new DR Horton house, this house would probably attract somebody wanting to live here longer. A lot of times those DR Horton houses, whether it be the price point that they're at, or just the nature of the beast, I always find that tenants move on because they're moving in there to build their own house, or they're waiting on their own DR Horton house to be built themselves, to then just move the next year. So these houses that are a little older, when you look at our portfolio that we're managing, I noticed that these tenants stay longer, which is a big win for the landlords. And it's, you know, the front and backyard, they're bigger. The DR Horton neighborhoods typically don't have much of a yard at all, and so kids can't run around. And basically, tenants realize after a lease that, oh, this might not be where we actually want to be. And then what happens there is they can move because they're not on a 30-year mortgage like the person that buys one next door. So they actually learn that it doesn't make sense for them and can get out because they are tenants versus homeowners. So there's that 3-season room. Okay, I walk out. That garage probably has that door out there and little fence-in yard. So that's, again, a huge benefit, just having that, so that way kids can have a controlled play area, and same with pets. Sadly, it pitches off, but either way, that's not a bad rental. I did not look at the price when we just randomly picked this house, but assuming the price works out, that's actually like a house I would want to invest in. A lot of the investors I'm working with right now that are looking for their first Knoxville deal, this is something that I would want them to purchase, you know, assuming the price makes sense, because it's going to be something that really does well in appreciation, gets really strong rent, and then they can do a little bit of a value add. Obviously, it still needs to get paint, it needs new kitchen cabinets. Like, they may be able to negotiate a pretty strong deal. And I just think that in the future, I don't know, I just have this pulse that's going to make a lot more sense, and it's going to be a win with the landlords that get a larger piece of land with the house. I don't know if that's because, like, you know, in 30 years they might change zoning and allow us to, like, build more, and then those landlords that have that extra land will come out on top. But just, I don't know, spending $350, $450 on a DR Horton and getting no actual land, I just think part of being an American is owning the land. And if you can own these larger tracts with that house and have it cash flow, I think you're going to be better off, because people will ultimately not be able to find this. You know, land is not created every day. It's never going to get created again. And so with that, that backyard is probably worth more in gold in the future than we may realize right now. So I'm about done just doing my first glance. Our next goal is to kind of go into penciling what we think this house will rent for monthly. So 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1769 square foot. I like to just go right to my calculator and see what $1.40 gets me, because $1.40 is a pretty good number to hit most days than not. And then I look at, and I haven't done the math quite yet, I just plugged in the equation. Once I see this number appear, I'm going to instantly do a gut check to say, okay, does I feel low or high? And then I kind of go from there. But that's ultimately the first step I do after taking my first glance at the property. So it's giving me 2,476, so rounded up 2,500. Do I think 2,500 is fair for this house? I absolutely do. I think the value of a 4th bedroom with a ton of square footage and a yard with a fence and garages can bring 2,500 every day. I think I rent houses that only have 3 bedrooms with those similar amenities for 2,500, assuming square footage and year built is competitive. So when I say competitive, like it needs to be a newer 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It needs to be larger than 1,300 square feet. But you know, those houses still bring 2,500. And so we're going to go on to Zillow Rent right now. We're just going to shop. I'm going to shop against this 2,500 for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath in this area. So I'm going to open up a new tab and see what we can get. And we were up in the Powell area, but we will take away the boundaries. For rent, let's do 4 beds. Let me see where our house was. So we gotta drop out. Okay, so just north of that Powell Drive drag. So we're just in this area. I'm gonna drop it down to 3. See, boom, 2,500, 3-bed, 3-bath. It is larger, but I always think the amount of bedrooms are more important than total square footage, assuming no extreme outliers. So on this house, similar front yard. See how they just have like neutral colors? You know, new cabinets. I get it. If you're tight on price and you don't really need that 4th bedroom, I would think most people would attack this house. But most people that are trying to get into single family houses that need more than 2 bedrooms would probably value that 4th bedroom equal to this house, even though this house is larger and has an additional bath and it's updated. It's kind of like that, you know, what do you need? What do you want more, aesthetics in another bath or another bedroom? Because ultimately families need space, and even though you think space is determined by square footage, ultimately most people identify it by the bedrooms. So from here, I would say let's just go back out because we just looked at one. So 2,100, I want to look at this just because it's obviously a lot lower. Well, it's a 3-bedroom, smaller square footage. Let's do the math right there. Let's find out what they're trying to charge per square footage, just to make sure we're near it. So they're charging $1.65, which is like quite literally on the dot of what I quote landlords when we're sub 1,500 square feet. Once you get larger and larger on a house, you can't keep up with that $1.65. It starts dropping. And the same goes for when you shrink on square footage. You actually increase your square footage price. Just like when you look at buying a house, those 800 square foot 2-bedroom 1-baths are going to get $2 a square foot, if not a little bit more, on rental compared to these quite larger homes. If you're over 2,000 square feet, you're going to get closer to that $1.10, $1.20 point, just because it doesn't scale. I mean, $1.65 on a 2,500 square foot house would be getting $4,000 in rent, actually more than that, which is unrealistic. So kind of back to the point, we're just looking at too small of a house with one less bedroom, and that's why it's asking for much less. So this doesn't scare me. I just like to pay attention to make sure I'm not seeing anything that should hint at something. 3-bedroom. So just like what I was saying previously, like a 3-bedroom can bring 2,500. It's just, it has to bring all the bells and whistles. So this one's bringing square footage and year built of home. Alright, well there's some more expensive ones. Here you go. 21 days on market. Let's see how long some of these have been up. I bet we can find one that's been up for a while. Typically the more expensive the rental, the longer it sits before it finds the right tenant. A lot of these are been up pretty recent though, so that's good. Hopefully they get going. But man, I'm gonna pull out of this market. I'm just gonna show you guys. Let's go payment high to low. It's like 122 days. 60 days. So yeah, these prices, that they're not going to get that. That's just crazy. I'm looking for things that have been on the market just extremely long. I've seen 100 plus. Yeah, here you go. 6-bedroom, 4-bath. It's a big house, a lot of value. I don't even know where this thing is. I lost it. I want to find that house. It's so funny. Like, over 3,000. I'm not saying things aren't worth it, but you gotta have all the bells and whistles, because you gotta get people that can afford it. People need to at least make 2.5 times the rent. So 2.5 times 3,200 is somebody making 8,000 a month. So household income 96,000. To me, more likely than not, that person's just going to buy a house. They're going to have a special situation, and it's probably going to be credit based, and it's going to be on you if you want to take on that risk or not. So, but let's just get back to the 4-bedroom. I just want to show you how just because something's priced down here doesn't mean it's actually going to go for it. So I do like to see the demand. So we're back in the neighborhood. Let's go 4-bedroom. So 29. Cool. It's a new build. Pretty much premium product. The one thing I like to look at is how many contacts they've had. So 25 contacts in the area for 13 days. That's pretty good. You're hoping to get 10 leads a week. That turns into about 3 showings, turns into 1 application a week, and then within the 4 weeks, you at least have 4 applications and can make a decision based on the first one that qualifies. And, you know, not everyone qualifies based on the credit, income requirements, criminal history, eviction history. It's all what you set. But the first people that qualify legally should get approved and sign a lease. And sometimes it takes 3 applications before someone actually qualifies, and then you get it gone. So that's it's on the lower end, but it is healthy to see that, because, you know, sometimes you'll see, you know, 13 days, 1 contact, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna treat that with a grain of salt, because I can't take that number that serious when no one's calling on it. But they are, and that's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,400 square feet. I'm going to find their square footage price, and it's not going to be necessarily a direct correlation. So they're doing $1.18. So we are in a much smaller house, so I'm not going to actually compare that with our property, because $1.18 is obviously not going to scale down to the equivalent of what we should rent for. That would be like way too low. $1.18 times the 1769, that'd be asking $2,100 for this house, and that would get gone in less than like 1 week. Everyone and their mother would be calling in on that. So back to this. So that's nice. All this is telling me, okay, this is the best 4-bedroom, 3-bath, you know, type home. That's the peak and ceiling of the market is $2,850. And so we're gonna jump back in. Let's go up here to $2,500. Still a little smaller, so that helps. Bathroom wise is larger. Been on the market 14 days. 5 contacts through the same property management company. That's a little low. It must be. That's interesting that one has way fewer. It's the aesthetics. They did not renovate this house when they bought it, so people want nice things if they got to pay a lot of money. But that's still that's a really competitive price for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath. So that kind of stinks that they don't have that many people calling on it. So at this point, I know, you know, okay, they're asking $2,500 for more square footage and another bath than ours. It's not getting a lot of action, but at the same time, let's look at that. That is actually a concern. It could just be the lack of photos. Like, we don't even know if it has a great yard, and that will deter people from clicking this button and trying to get more information, to be honest. So that it could just be the poor marketing, because I really think ours can get $2,500, and ours is smaller, less bath, and older. So it's not the greatest thing to see this. Let's pull out and look at the whole market, because we're getting a little tunnel vision in that area. So if we do 4-bedroom, 3-bath, we do only houses, and then let's price it max like 2,600. Well, yeah. So if we were shopping with 2,500, we could get a lot. There's a lot of options, and that's where the speed to find a tenant can actually slow down, guys. So you're hoping that someone needs to strategically be in Powell for a job, and that happens quite often in higher demand areas. So, you know, not crazy, but like this house, 107 days, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,500, and it's larger. So this is a house that's like technically just a better product than what we're trying to rent. Why is that? I only got 6 applications on this thing. That's crazy. Where is this? Huh. I mean, Cedar Bluff, that should be going like a hotcake. Wonder if that square footage is accurate, because I recognize this build, and I don't think that's 1,800 or 1,900 square feet. I think it's a 1,300 square foot build from D.R. Horton. Because I have one of these, and it rents for like 2,300, and it's much smaller, and it's only a 3-bed. And yeah, that's kind of crazy. I don't think this house is actually 4 bedrooms. If anyone's watching this, if you guys think this is actually 3-bedroom, I think it is a 3-bedroom. There's only bedrooms on the upstairs of this layout. I know it, and there's only 3 of them. So I don't know why they have it listed like that, but that's clear. That's not good. So, how comping can get really confusing. All right. Well, let's pull up Rentometer. Let's see what it says on ours. So this is just a service. You can pay a couple $100 a year, and it kind of can spit out some decent data. I don't take it to heart, but it certainly puts you in the right direction. So I'm gonna take our subject matter property, kick it into here. Say, oh, it's 4 bits. 1.5 only. I do all just to kind of see what the data pulls back. 12 months, radius. I'll do 2 miles. Hopefully it can give me some data. Yeah, so like where I was saying, I like the median number, just the most often, and these are all the comps around. Let's view the report. So this is, again, I think this is like super accurate, and these are the exact numbers I would actually tell a landlord if they called me and were like, hey, what do you think this house will rent for? I'm thinking about putting an offer in. 75th percentile, meaning like the top paying tenants in the market are paying $26.55, which is more than fair for this type of an asset. And then the 25th percentile, so the people that are paying the least are paying $23.17. And I really think this is super accurate. But I will say, like, we're coming out of a winter, so it's like a slow season. So those higher end properties that already don't get a lot of demand just based on the lack of the amount of people that can afford them, those properties were probably getting leased on average for less. And then hopefully we're coming into a spring and summer where we can get the prices we're seeing here once again. So just another thing to think of when you have vacancies is making sure it doesn't happen between, preferably not between Thanksgiving and Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's. But ultimately, if you can wait till the trees bud before you have a vacancy in the spring, that's the best time. So you can get the marketing photos up and really get a property leased really quickly, because just things happen in the spring. People are graduating and getting their first time jobs, and other people are just changing schools and they're moving, and that's the time that makes sense for the family. And then just things happen in the spring and summer with families. So that's kind of the time to be available and be able to take on the next tenant and have the best price you can during the year. If anyone has any questions, just put it in the comments and I will try to see it. I got a couple monitors here. But, alrighty. So, back to the house. by this point, I would just text the landlord. Yeah, 2,500. I'd probably put it out there for 2,600 for the first week. See if we can get some demand, and then ultimately they would need to be okay with. I would tell them 2,400 on the low end, because that is technically below average by $86. So, and we can look at the comps here. The one closest to us is getting rented for $2,450. It's 2,100 square feet. That detail. We can just look it up here. So, boom. Which, nicer, really nice curb appeal. Not, I wouldn't say nicer than the one we're trying to get, but again, the kitchen is nothing fancy. 1990s type kitchen, and pretty small cabinets as well, or not that many, I should say. Neutral color though, it helps. That this house needs a good paint. That's what it needs whether it for the sale of the house or the for rent, before the for rent sign goes out. Alrighty, that's crazy. The AMH, that must be some like huge conglomerate that is trying to buy and sell these houses and get them rented. Alrighty, so at this point I would just consider it a 2,500. I also would use the properties that I manage as a baseline of what I think I can do, because every property manager has their own opinion, and it's a lot of times based on their portfolio of what numbers they've been getting for other houses that are similar to this one. And for me, even before looking at the data, I was thinking, okay, 24 would be super low, 28 would be super high. It's going to land somewhere in between there. The question is, what's the number that's going to get it gone in the next 4 weeks if we close today and put the for rent sign on the front lawn? And then what that number that comes out of my mouth, that represents the one that gets a lease signed in under 4 weeks with a well-qualified tenant. So those are two huge variables. Can you get something rented for, could you get this house rented for $3,000? Yes. How quickly? I have no idea. It could be like 6 months, and then find somebody. You've seen those listed on Zillow for rent. You can go on there yourself right now by clicking a tab and just looking at houses that are above $3,000. It's typically by an individual landlord or a property manager that's getting strung along by somebody, thinking that it's worth more than what it is. But eventually, yes, something can get rented for that. The difference between selling and renting is when you are trying to rent something, it has to happen typically in under 4 weeks. And when you're selling something, most people would wait 6 months to sell it for 30% more. The problem when it's rented is most landlords have a mortgage that they're trying to cash flow on, and they cannot wait 6 months before a tenant moves in. Now, let's say that was the end of the story. I think there would be still some landlords that would say, that sounds amazing, Dan. If I could get $3,000, I will wait 6 months. The next question is, will that tenant stay there for more than a year, or will you have vacancy again? And that will basically take away from the entire reason you waited for that $3,000 a month. So there's that variable. Then there's was that tenant even well qualified? Because when you have fewer applicants, you have a lesser chance of acquiring a strong candidate. So, your credit, your income, and when you say income, how long are you expecting that income to be proven? So is it only 1 month? Because someone could, be up on their luck, win the lottery, and had a lot of money come in the last 4 weeks. But that may not represent that they're responsible person that has a job that has been paying them for the last 2 years. So, 3 to 6 months of income is what actually qualifies somebody in my eyes as having 2.5 to 3 times the rent to prove they can afford the home. If you're only looking at 1 month of pay stubs, a lot of people can put themselves in good positions for 4 weeks, but it's a much more responsible person that can do 12, 24, 52 weeks, if not more. So, the last year of even taxes can help, and pay stubs for a whole year to date is typically what I'm looking at. So just the quality of tenant, even if they were paying $3,000, yes, you can find people to pay too much, but those are the people that are used to high interest rates, and those are typically the people with lower credit that will not qualify traditionally. So, you're a landlord, you make your own decisions. Those would be higher risk plays with higher rewards as well. But this house, clearly 25 to 26 is the responsible number. The other conversation on this is once a tenant moves in, like we've said previously with the D.R. Hortons, with the lack of yard, people will learn if they actually appreciate what they're renting. And after a year, they typically go shopping online and they try to see what else they can afford. If you are renting for a little less than market rate, they typically go online and cannot find anything as nice as what they have. But if they can find things just as nice for just the same price, that is the minimum situation. Like, how do I put that? Even if they can find something that's not even nicer and it's not even cheaper, they still may move. So that creates vacancy in your house as the landlord, and it can hurt you. Now, is every landlord going to guard themselves from that? No, most people are going to charge market rent. However, if you're really against vacancies, and I'm going to create a video on this week or next week on kind of calculating when it makes sense to have a vacancy versus when it does not, based on current rent and market rent. So current rent in the house that you have performing versus the market rent of what it should be performing on. There's just certain circumstances. But back to this, I'm kind of losing my train of thought. Give me a second. I was saying, oh yeah, the people after a year will realize if they actually want to rent your house long term, and that's when they may even want to sign a 2-year lease, and you can make that decision. But what you're trying to do is put a tenant in there to have them pay market rate, and then really never move out would be the goal, because then you would have no vacancy and they're constantly paying the market rate. And when you're just a little under market rate, they'll go online and not be able to find things as nice, and the things that aren't as nice are maybe as expensive. So they can't save money, and they can't really spend the same money and find something better, and then that keeps them in the house renting. Where someone that buys a house, no matter what, they're going to sell themselves that they made the right decision. They're going to sit there for 30 years unless they can afford something bigger. And it's going to take a lot more capital and a bigger decision for them to move than a tenant. And I think a lot of times landlords forget that. Tenants have options. That's the whole point in renting, is when they want to leave, they can, and they will. So we're always trying to figure out ways to ethically make them feel like, this is the place they want to be at long term. And that's by pricing strategically, having strategic amenities like fences and actual yards, and any other amount of ways we can keep them happy and keeping them feeling like this is the best deal for their situation that they're in. So let's actually back out. So we're done comping this. Let's move on to just what would we need to buy this house for to make it cash flow. And I'm going to use a little chat GPT, so that way it's a little unbiased for insurance and those kind of prices, because I usually kind of hit those high on my mortgage calculator right here. So I got all these toggles that I'm going to move up and down and kind of look at the monthly payment. And our goal is to have it cash flow, let's say $200 after standard 10% property management. So you have the mortgage, you have inside of that taxes, insurance, and your interest, and no HOA because we're just going to stay away from that, but if we get into that later, whatever. And I don't really want to plan for vacancies for this, but we'll put a budget in there of $100 extra for maintenance every month, which means annually you're going to have a savings account saving up to $1,200 for those just surprise maintenance calls. But again, we're not going to calculate vacancy for a single family. And so mortgage, taxes, insurance, interest, all that will be bundled into one. And then we're going to put the $100 for maintenance. And then 10% for property manager in there. So off $2,500, it's going to be another $250 a month. And then we want to have an excess of $200 after all of that a month. And that excess is not to make you rich. It's quite literally to make sure that you don't bleed, and it's a responsible investment to make. And after I say that, I would like to also state we're going to go into this. There's going to be investors that are going to laugh at how much money that has to go into this deal. I believe that any piece of real estate that doesn't cause a lot of maintenance and appreciates over time is a great deal, and it's better than having your money sit in the bank. There are obviously a lot of people in Knoxville with the expectations to be able to burr out of every single property they buy, and a lot of the landlords I manage for have that expectation, and it's actually helped them grow very, very large and profitable portfolios, but it's also hurt them as well based on the amount of deals they can find a year. And I just think that we all have our own game, and I don't judge anyone on their goals and how they achieve them. So with inside of real estate investing, so let's look at this deal. 375 right now is about, I kind of always suggest for investors to keep under 400 grand on single family houses, just because it's so significantly hard to cash flow on anything more expensive than that. Obviously the down payment helps, but with something over 400,000 comes there comes a point where it just won't rent for any more. So I always kind of like to keep things renting for under 2,600, so that way we're not trying to fill a niche demand of luxury renting. I don't want to rent a house for $5,000. That's probably something out in Farragut. It's got a horse barn and all these other things that come with it on water property. But at the end of the day, it's we want standard ranch houses where a significant amount of families in our area can afford and want to rent it, because that brings stability. In real estate, although you will hire a property manager, you're going to want that thing to really perform on its own and to keep really basic. And the bigger the house you go, the more square footage you have to maintain. And so you don't really want to necessarily put a ton of money in one asset for one door. Yes, spend millions on multifamily because that's what it actually takes. But when you're looking at some luxury ranch house, especially for long-term renting, it comes to a point where it's just silly, and you might as well just go and buy 3 more traditional middle class homes because they will actually cash flow better, they'll appreciate better, and there'll always be a market for the majority of Americans to want to buy them someday if you choose to offload them in the future. So $400,000 and below is just a great starting line when I talk to investors that are out of state. And these are people coming from New York City, people coming from California, people coming from Arizona. They have a ton of cash on hand and they're not really worried about how much money they have to put into the deal. And that's where I actually have to like back them up a little bit and explain like, hey, that's great, but there is a better way to distribute your cash in order for us to grow your net worth over time faster than if we just blow it all in one luxury property. So, people watching this are going to be like, what? You have a problem with like having too much cash? Like I'm trying to find my first investment property and I want to burr out of it successfully and use the debt and basically finance 110%, so that way that leftover 10% can be my down payment on my next deal, and you're trying to jump into the market that way, where that is not everybody. There are other people on the exact opposite that are willing to go all cash down. I have 3 landlords right now that have done that on single families, and they sleep really well at night. They know that all $2,500 of the rent truly after our fees goes right into their bank account, and they don't have any concern about anything because they don't have any mortgage chasing them. And that is like how they want to play the game. And then there's people right in the middle that are like, nah, like you kind of need a little bit of a mortgage to chase you. It keeps you competitive. It keeps your margins and percentages important, and it makes you not get lazy about making sure you grow your net worth and grow your portfolio over time. And I'm kind of there. I think that leveraging 50% is still like, I would say 90% of people are not even keeping it as low as 50% leveraged. I think most people are doing less than 20%, meaning they're finding off-market deals where they don't even have to bring a 20% down payment into the deal for it to cash flow. And even that is kind of where they don't want to be even putting that much cash in. So not to get all confusing, but basically there's people that only want to put $1 into a deal and people that are willing to put like $500,000 into a deal of the same single family house. And we're going to look at this as what it has to be to cash flow $200. So $375, 4-bedroom, 2-bath. Interest rates, let's just ask ChatGPT, what are current interest rates for landlords purchasing single family? Rates between 7.16 and 7.67. So say 7.4. 7.4 on my mortgage calculator. Let's do 7.5 because that's easier on the thumbs. 30 years, taxes. One second, I'm looking it up. It's my least favorite thing to look up taxes. Let me do this. First time ever live right now. We're going to take this listing. I'm going to ask ChatGPT to ask, what would the annual taxes cost on this listing? Then provide the URL. Let's see if it's smart. Hey, it's that smart. So, or it's trying to be that smart. Annual taxes for 8205 Cricket Road are approximately $1,027. It's based upon assessed value 375,000 times 25%, which is 93,750. Knox County property tax rate is $2.12 per $100 assessed. Applying this rate, annual property tax 93,750 divided by 100 multiplied by $2.12 equals 1,987.50 cents. This calculated amount defers the reported tax. Okay, so annually it's going to be 1987.50 cents. Just saying, if you bought this house, it would be like, I think the word would be prorated for between the seller and the buyer. Looks as though. Yeah, so 1,987. $1,987. And then what would annual insurance be? I'm asking it, is that true even if I was a landlord? And it's saying yes. It's saying that seems really high. Estimated landlord insurance costs. So a standard homeowner's insurance is like 28 to 3,000, it's saying, but it's also saying a landlord policy, which is, higher, would be like 3,200 to 3,750 a year. So that's pretty high. I'm just gonna put like 3,200. So now we're right now with no money down, borrowing $375,000 with that 7.5 interest rate, 30 years, taxes at $1,987 with $3,200 annually in insurance. You're talking a monthly payment of $3,054, knowing that this house will safely rent for $2,500. Let's see what it takes to get to a $2,500 monthly payment, assuming we find out what the down payment is. So just scrolling my down payment, when I'm at $78,750, so just 79 grand down, my monthly payment is $2,500. So now I need to figure out, the property manager is going to take another $250, and I want another $100 for maintenance, and I want to cash flow $200. So I'm just going to add all that up. So I need $250 plus $200 plus $100, so $550 additional off. So I basically need to get where the monthly payment is $1,950 a month. And you guys are going to see why people aren't buying these houses like hotcakes for investment properties. It's just the reality. We're looking at right now we are looking at it was a 1973 build, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,769 square foot. And based on the interest rates right now, I'm just confirming, 1973 build. Based on the interest rates right now, for this investment to be a responsible cash flowing property, this is a $375,000 house. Someone would need to bring $157,000 to make this cash flow $200 a month. So quite literally, your down payment is $157,500, which is 42% of this house needs to be paid down in cash before you close. And then you have your closing costs as well. I'm asking ChatGPT to give me a closing cost. Yeah, like on basically another 12, 13,000. So cash on hand for this property to be anywhere near cash flowing is, if we add, what did I say? Let's add 15 grand for closing costs. So about $175,000, let's say, would bring this deal to where cash flows $200 a month. And that is where I have realized that real estate is really where you hold your wealth. It's not necessarily where you always will create your wealth, and that's okay. And I think that having a little bit lower expectations on what real estate is and what it can provide will bring people to realize that maybe they need to build some businesses or create more personal income before they turn into a buy and hold investor. And you know, there's a lot of people that may disagree with that, but I think that ultimately, if you want nice assets, and like this would be a really nice asset to own, you will have to bring the cash for it to work. Otherwise, you will have to look at less desirable properties because they will be off market, and those off market deals are not controlled by anyone but the wholesalers and the realtors bringing them to us, and they are somewhat of a bargain bin. And when you look in the bargain bin, you do not get to choose where it's at around town, when it was built, and the quality of assets. So obviously those are things where people are dying to get into those types of deals for the value add, which is obviously a huge place where they build equity and can scale out of that. However, for the virtual investor looking to invest in Knoxville, I would advise not starting out with something that needs a ton of value add, but may just have some value adds down the road, like this house we're looking at that has kitchen cabinets that could be updated. The house could be painted. There are things that we can do to increase rent. However, they're not necessary for it to cash flow, assuming you bring the appropriate money. Brenda's asking, do I do yearly walkthroughs to make sure tenants are keeping the place up? How do you make sure air filters are changed? So I do a move-in inspection. So our team does a move-in inspection, we do a mid-lease inspection, and then we do a move-out inspection if they're gone. And if the tenant wishes to stay, we actually do a lease renewal inspection before we sign a lease with that tenant, just to make sure we think that they're treating the property the way they should be, so that way we don't have delayed maintenance over 5 years, or someone hoarding in a house and they're just trying to stay there, and it turns into a bigger issue down the road. So we're at a property every 6 months for some reason. And then with the air filters, we've honestly created a text thread that just kind of goes out to those tenants every 3 months, reminding them that they need to change air filters. That's kind of like the standard thing that we've done. However, for an upcharge, there's obviously chances for us to get in there and do that with those inspections. And a lot of times with the move out process, when we have the house vacant, we are changing that air filter when the tenant moves out. But ultimately it is on the tenant to make sure that's being done, and we do score them on our mid-lease and our move out, or sorry, our mid-lease and our lease renewal inspection to make sure that they are following that. So there's not a cheap way to make sure that an air filter gets changed every month other than us trying to remind those tenants. Otherwise, when you do have a physical person at a property, just like a handyman or an HVAC guy, like anytime you have a professional on a property, it does cost $50 to $100 to have them there. And that is it's something that landlords don't want to pay that dollar bill for the air filter simply to be changed correctly. So we've turned it into a reminder system on our end, and it doesn't cost us very much, and we can just do that every 3 months. So looking at this deal, obviously not necessarily the deal that I would send to somebody even out of state that, you know, has a ton of money to spend and say, yeah, this is the one, you should do it. Anything over $100,000 for a down payment is just like, to me, it's silly. But, you know, we all have our expectations, and I really, in property management, have learned not to judge what people want to do, and that can be leveraging all debt or leveraging absolutely no debt. So I think that there's a lot of ways to win this game for sure. So I will say, you know, we've obviously been on here for about an hour. We've comped this rental, and then we've also kind of dissected it from a perspective of purchasing the house and then turning it into that rental. At this point, I just want to go over what we're doing this week. So my team, we're kind of handling some random weird stuff. I had a landlord call me last week saying that the neighbor actually called them and stated that a tenant has been going on the neighbor's property to access the rental unit, and then that tenant has also in the past been burning things in the backyard when there was a no burn ban active. And so, you know, I'm going to be looking through the lease and trying to find ways to make sure that this tenant understands past a stern conversation, because we've had these stern conversations before. But I'll be looking through the lease to basically find ways to legally bring up and ultimately see if I can get the tenant out. I'll be honest. If I cannot do that based on the lease, then we will obviously make a note and not renew that tenant. Just a lot of things like that this coming week, I've noticed. I think we're onboarding a couple new landlords with like single properties each, so nothing too crazy to call home about with regards to our portfolio increasing, but certainly more people trusting us with their properties, so that's cool. And I think we are at like pretty low when it comes to vacant units. I'm gonna pull it up. So just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these three came on this past Friday. Seymour, Knoxville, and Maryville. And then this is up in Jacksboro. Same Jacksboro. We kind of have we have 35 units up there, so we always have a couple that we're trying to fill, and we're kind of turning over that whole community into a better cash flowing, better qualified tenant area. One cool thing that I like is our listing page actually has a map, so you can actually see what we have vacant. So that's the Jacksboro community we have up there. But yeah, we just got some properties to fill. We'll have a ton of showings. We do them all in person. So my team will be out there doing that. And I know we've gotten some maintenance over the weekend that was non-emergency, so we're kind of dealing with that stuff. And hopefully getting a YouTube video out Wednesday or Thursday. I'm going to have to actually film it tomorrow. And so I usually film it a week before, so we'll see if we can get that edited before Wednesday. But hopefully by Friday we post that. And if you guys know of anyone that needs to look at a rental to understand what it will rent for, and if they should buy it, just send them our way, and we can do something similar like this on a Google Meet, or I can do it next Sunday, because I think I'm going to go live every week. What's up, Luke Rivers? Dropping in the gold. Hopefully it's something. So we will see you. I did 1 hour and 10 minutes. I have talked long enough. Thank you all, and good night. Rent's due.